Perfect. Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. My family's out there. So I just want to thank everybody here for attending, and the Western Region Roundup Committee. I really appreciate each and every one of you to reach out to me and to do this very embarrassing presentation. But it's an honor to be able to serve just in general for 15 years, but then to volunteer to go submarines. So I wouldn't have been able to do anything without my family. They're in the back. Thank you. My husband, Cameron, he hates when I call him my seahorse, but what do the seahorses do? The males take care of the children, right? So I just like to embarrass him at least once when I'm doing something like this. My oldest had to stay home, 19-year-old, she's in college, and I have my 11-year-old and 5-year-old here. So I'm a very busy mother, but I love doing what I do. I love serving my community and being a part of USSVI and the Bremerton base. So it's just such a great time to meet each and every one of you. If I haven't met you, I apologize. Come hail me down, throw something at me. I'll stop and say hello. I love talking. My husband does not appreciate that, but he just does something else while I do that. So I'm going to speak a little bit about after my volunteer to the submarine community. And I'll go over like when I made my decision. I'll go through sub school, my experience there, and I'll touch on moving into birthing, and then get into moving in, fully integrating on board, the attitude of the gentleman, acceptance of the crew. Did I see a difference in myself? And then my overall story. So I'll go through all those stages, and then after I'll do a slideshow of my career in a snippet. So this will just stay up. I'll just be speaking to you so it doesn't distract you having those pictures up there. But I'm really excited to share that. Also, on the USS Bremerton monument table, I put my picture books there I started on the Embrace land, AS-39 in La Maddalena, Italy, and I went full circle and ended up on a submarine. So my picture book is there for that, and then my best submarine book is there. So you can thumb through any of that. I also have a brown book. If you can, sign it. Your name, not signed, but put your name, your call boat, and where you're from. I always want to remember your legacy, where you came from, and where I met you at. So I appreciate that. All right. So good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to share a part of my journey that completely changed the direction of my career and honestly, my life. The decision came pretty critical, and I was approaching my higher tenure, which was basically the Navy's way of saying you hit your limit in time and you have to get out. And that this was a time that I was already in the process of separating and going through my transition classes twice, but I knew I wasn't ready to get out. I wanted to retire, but that was part of a setback, and I'll tell you a later story if you see me in person about my setback. So then something unexpected happened. The Women in Submarines initiative came out, and my career counselors came looking for me. And I knew that it might be important because they didn't send it through email. They didn't text me. They came to the galley rushing over because they knew that I wanted to stay Navy and I wanted to retire. That was my goal, my priority. And so they asked me, would you consider submarines? And quickly I said yes. As my response, and then okay, and I followed quickly by, well, let me go ask my husband. Because I had answered them and they were like ready to go, but I had to go home and have a conversation with my husband. And that was not a long conversation because we knew that that was something that I could do, probably with my eyes closed. As a cook in the Navy, I go into work when it's dark. I leave when it's dark. I don't go outside very often, you know, and I did smoke, so I didn't go outside during the day. So it was fast. Within days, I submitted my package and it was off. Her councils had no idea, you know, what we were doing. They never put in a 1306 paperwork request for a female to go to subs. So they had, and it was Naval Station Norfolk. They don't do those processes there very often. So it was fast and unexpected, but it gave me exactly what I needed, a path forward and a chance to end my career strong. So that was the decision. So heading into sub school, the training phase. So I walked into sub school and I treated it like any other training command. My focus was simple, to learn. Now, the instructors wanted to assign leadership roles, but I had already spent 15 years in leadership or working my way to leadership. So I stepped back and I let the junior sailors take that role. There was no reason for me to do that. They needed to learn. And it was only proper for a junior sailor, a new sailor coming in to learn how to be a leader. And that was intentional, because sometimes the best move for leadership is to move out of the way and knowing when not to lead. The real challenge was learning submarine terminology, data dumping, all of that surface stuff from the last 15 years. It was like speaking a different language. So, and let me be honest, nothing truly prepares you for submarine life. You can read all about it, you could study it, but it hits differently when you're actually there. And just before I left sub school, I had taken the E6 exam, the first class exam in the surface fleet, and I passed. I was promoted while in sub school. So I left as an E5 to basic submarine school, and I left as a first class, which was a blessing. So I was already headed in the right path in that 8 weeks. So now it wasn't just about learning, I was about to lead again, which was exciting. I was ready for that. Moving on board, because I was only in sub school 8 weeks, I didn't have to be there very long. It wasn't a long wait or anything like that. So I moving on board, my first impression of the berthing was surprisingly very positive. Fewer people. In the surface fleet, we have probably 150 females in one berthing. And us females know, having more than 5 women around, we don't get along so well, you know, living together. And then 150 women sharing 6 bathrooms. We made it work, but we fought a lot for space. So I was okay with the living arrangements of the 13-man bunk room. Sharing a living, no problem. But the rack, whew, that was a lot smaller than I was used to. But moving fluidly with everything, you know, you just prioritize what you wear. Uniforms, and even we cut down on uniforms, you know, because we don't always wear a dress uniform away. So that was very simple as well. Let's see. So if you've never seen grown adults perfectly fold themselves into small places, it's pretty impressive. There are some large men, and these racks were all standard size. So I thought I was very uncomfortable some days in my rack, and I'm not a big person. So that, you know, giving the dependents a good picture of what that would look like or sound like or feel like, you know, having your shoulder brush on that rack is something different. But storage was limited, but that was expected, and I learned that quickly versus what I thought I needed. The noise was constant, you know, it's a living city. We are always on watch, and that was normal as well. But living in the more apt 13-man bunk room by the A-gangers, machinery too is pretty loud. You know, it's rowdy, they're fun. They're great people. Any A-gangers out there? Yeah. But you get used to that noise. And so it just becomes, you know, something in the background and you get used to those voices on watch. So that was something that I did not mind. I knew I was safe and those guys were making me my water and my air. Guys, I guess. So that went smoothly. And my first dive or our first emergence, right? I was terrified of that. I wasn't sure how that would go. I heard a lot of, you know, horror stories, you know, the water coming in, you know, just not properly sealing off, just, you know, running all of our compartments, sealing them properly for those who don't know what that is. But we had water coming in and we had to come back up because the pressure and re-rig for dive. I was like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm asleep every time we do that, just in case I die, I die. That was just in my mind, you know. I always tried to be asleep when something bad happened. It didn't work out that way. I was usually cooking. Excuse me. So yes, my first dive was memorable for all the wrong reasons. But another memorable moment was loading out them TDU weights. That box was so small, but man, it was mighty heavy. So if you don't know what you're doing and nobody warns you, you know, you can throw your back out. It was one little box and we're loading out these boxes, hundreds of them. So that was another experience that I had to make sure that I wore my back brace for. Moving in, fully integrating on board. Once underway, everything changed immediately. There was no easing into it. Once we left the pier, suddenly it was go to sleep, it's now 2200. I thought that was the weirdest thing. In the surface, 2200, 10 p.m. So in the surface, you know, when we're going on deployment on mission, they give us several days to work the time zones in so our body gets acclimated into that system of sleep, you know, our circadian rhythm. No, submarines is you're going, go to sleep. I know you just got up, it's 8 in the morning, but now it's 10 at night and everybody changed their clocks. That was just, that was so hard. Every time. I don't think I ever got used to that and I'm still making up sleep for it. You can ask my husband, I said, I'm always tired. I have to make up for sleep. So I'm always sleeping when I'm not doing something. I don't think I will ever catch up on the 21 years of not sleeping. So just transitioning, no warning, just adjust to it. And being new and qualified, while the leading petty officer was a bit of a challenge as well. Especially when you're still trying to prove yourself. I'm unqualified, I'm first class, and I'm leading a whole entire division. Nobody wants to listen to the new guy, the newbie, anyway. And so that was a challenge for myself with my junior sailors. They're like, why should we listen to you? I'm like, well, I'm your CSO. They're like, we don't care. You're the F and G, the new guy. So working through that, cooking, baking, laundry, leadership, paperwork, and all that sometimes happened in one day. You know, you're working 8 hours and the next couple hours you're the baker or you're in the wardroom. And then after that, you're the laundry queen, you know, until that's done. Yeah. And then having training on the cruise mess, you know, we're sharing spaces. That was a new thing for me. I wasn't, what is it? I didn't have the clearance for nuke training, so I'd have to leave the cruise mess instead of doing my paperwork. So I'd have to wait a couple of 4 hours to catch up with my paperwork after my watch or whatnot. So some days we didn't sleep very much. Every day felt different. There was no really set routine until you're qualified. It's just controlled chaos the whole entire time. But most is meaningful roles, and it didn't take on my job description, right? What What I loved is what I became after, gaining the trust of my crew. I became the mama bear. There were only 3 mothers on board. There were about 30 females, about 30 females on board, but there were 3 mothers, which is different as opposed to being a father. Being a mother is a little different. Being underway and your captain coming to you and saying, Happy Mother's Day. I immediately start crying because I'm like, why did you remind me that I'm away from my babies? Excuse me. But I took that and I thought about it, and I started to mother my sailors, as you will. And I would make sure I would learn them, as we all do. We learn facial expressions. We learn the tone of their voice. I see everyone every single day because I'm the cook. So if I saw somebody not having a great day, I think my purpose in life is to make people smile. So I would ask people how they were doing. But that also took a toll on me. The captain or my chief would always put me in front as the face and try to keep the morale up. And that's totally. And that's where I want to thank my sister Thelma, the other female submarine in the room. Raise your hand. That's Thelma. She would come and check on me. She would make sure that I was okay, because she would see me crying, in a corner, couldn't go to sleep. But, I needed that extra, checking on as well. Everyone is human. I'm not a machine. And I felt like a machine for a long time. And I really appreciated her tremendously. And we talk about it, stories sometimes amongst our base. And, I get a little emotional. I don't like to talk about it because it was rough. I think I try to forget about it. But she reminds me of that, and I really appreciate that she did that for me, the things I was doing for the crew as well. So thank you. So I created moments of normalcy, and doing those things, I had a Easter egg hunt on board. I saved the fresh cracked eggs. I would clean them out. I'd stick them right back in the crates, put them in the fan room, and they dry. And 2-3 days before Easter, I had the crew, because I brought crayons, of course, and we decorated the Easter eggs, and then I filled them with shred. Yeah, I did. The chiefs are not excited about that. Filled them with shred, and I made glue from flour and water, and I put some tissue paper over, because of course I brought tissue paper, and we made confetti eggs. And I had 3 separate Easter egg hunts for every single watch section. And that was just so much fun, because I had it in the missile compartment. We had it, I had rules I had to get it approved by the captain. And we had Easter egg hunts for all 3 sections, and they loved it. They weren't allowed to crack them. They could crack them on the crew's mess so we could clean them up. But they would crack them on each other's heads, and they were laughing and having a good old time. And it took them away from that stressful environment for that day. And it was so much fun. And my captain was like, never in the history of submarine in my career did we have such a great moment and an Easter egg hunt. He's like, I think that'll be the first and probably the last, because he looked around the cruise mess like, this is a mess. I'm like, clean it up. I do it all day. But I wanted to give the crew something. And it was so much fun. So that was one of my fondest moments, seeing the smiles on the crew's face. So moving on to the guys' attitude. So when we first arrived, things were very awkward. There was a lot of hesitation. Some avoided interaction completely. And honestly, that made sense. They had gone through very extensive, intense training or warnings, like harassment prevention, things like that. They were afraid to look at us the wrong way. And nobody wanted to mess up. That was understood. Us fleet returnees, the females that came from the surface fleet, aviation fleet, that were in the military, we understood that, the junior females that came from boot camp, they were just like, what's wrong with these They are weird. No, it was a normal reaction to the training they got, all the warnings. And of course, the spouses were like, nah, don't you dare, but honestly, it was us having to prove to everyone that we were there to just do a job. We were just like you. We have a uniform to put on. We have a job to do. We want to go home too. So it was a lot of working towards that trust and the communication for everyone to understand that we were there just like you. And we were excited to be there, something new, but we had a job to do. And we learned the life and death, the brotherhood, the sisterhood in sub school, how important that was. So my C-Dad relationship, that was the first time hearing that word. So my C-Dad was a third class. And let's just say that was challenging too. He reminded me often that I was a surface sailor, and he called me a different name other than that. Every time. He did not address me as my last name. He did not address me as my rank or my rate. He was like, you're the surface, whatever. So I was like, man, like, maybe my first name? No. So until I proved otherwise, that's what he called me. But he was my C-Dad, so he was allowed to. My other junior sailors that worked in my division did not call me that, which was nice. So let me see. So when they saw me working, this was me proving myself. They saw me working in the galley, and I showed them more efficient ways to do things because I was used to working with hundreds, sometimes thousands of sailors. We had to work in a way that was faster and more efficient and, tips and tricks and stuff like that. So they started to pay attention and they were like, oh, okay, she's not just some dumb lady from the surface fleet. But going back to the MRS land, my CMC and my chiefs, my first classes came from submarines. So they taught me like a submariner and I didn't realize it. So I did things from scratch. I knew all the basics to everything. When I did my CMC checkout for my enlisted submarine qualification, it was a cop that was getting us the checkout. And so we did things the way a submariner would, and I didn't even realize that until circling back, and I was like, oh, okay, this makes so much more sense, but it was like 15 years later. So that's when things started to shift, when they started to see my work ethic, or they started to understand what I was saying when I was trying to teach them things around the boat. Not around the boat, but in the galley. So acceptance in the crew. It didn't happen overnight. It took time and, performance with the whole crew, not just my guys. We had to prove that we were there to do the job, not anything else. Coming from the fleet helped already, so we understood the expectations and we knew the job was going to be rigorous. That was just something that we worked hard in our previous, I call it my previous life. So that was just trying to confine it to the submarine and the submarine way. But I did that well, apparently. And so the First Class Petty Officer Association, to be a board member, you had to be qualified. Well, the president, excuse me, asked the captain if they could waive that because they liked my work ethic. They liked my communication. They liked how I got things done. So the captain said, yeah, sure. So I was nominated and voted for vice president of First Class Petty Officer Association. And that was a nice feeling, not being qualified. So other first class were like, I don't understand. This is dumb. You're giving her female privileges. And they were like, no, what does she do for you? And they shut up really quickly because I did help around the boat. And I gave really great ideas for the first classes to help in their divisions as well. So that trust meant everything. And once I was qualified, everything changed. Like I said, communication improved, respect increased, and I could fully step into my role as a leader, as an LPO. Of course, that took about a year to earn that. So did I see a difference? There was a difference, a big one. And the change of command for the captain, new XO, new Cobb, for everyone in the room who doesn't know what the chain of command. That was the big change. That new chain of command, we were on board for about a year now. We did a deployment with a mission, and the new range said, well, you act like adults, we'll treat you like adults. You do dumb things, you'll win stupid prizes. So after that, it was great because everybody could communicate, everybody could do a turnover, everybody could be in the same space and feel comfortable because we knew it wasn't going to be a cops and robbers type situation anymore. Because I feel like, you know, the chain of command or the wardrobe and chief's mess were just looking for problems in that first year. But after the chain of command, it felt like a command, and we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, you know, focusing on the mission. The tents faded, morale improved tremendously. And for the first time, it did feel normal. We felt that, you know, the women did belong there. And they let us know that too. You know, we appreciate you being here. This is a lot funner than we thought it was going to be. So we could perform the same level as any other man. They believed that because they were seeing it. You know, Thelma was back there making water, making air, you know, doing the scrubber. She was doing it all, you know, and I was running circles around the galley, showing them tips and tricks. And, you know, all of us females were all sprinkled all over the boat, back aft in the engine room, all the way up forward. We were doing our thing, which was great. We were free to do our jobs and not have to stress on anything else other than that. And, you know, looking back at all of that, it was incredible. That of course, there's always, you know, difficult times. The days are long, but the years go by fast. And it became such a truly great experience on both sides, for the males and the females. We learned a lot from each other, not just about our jobs, but about, you know, being a person, being a human, and knowing that we were out on a mission doing things in nowhere. And I didn't even know that I was going to be going to a submarine when I joined the Navy. You know, I didn't even know what a submarine was when I joined. So when I got to the Everest land, you know, it was a full story. I was like, what the heck is that thing in the water? You know, I don't, big tube, you know, big hot dog in the water. I don't know what that is, but, you know, other fellow cooks that I went to tech school with in San Antonio, he came up, he was like, hey, Ileene, you want to come down to the galley? I'm like, there's a galley in there? And they were like, yeah. So I got to see a fast attack for the first time as, you know, an 18-year-old. And that was interesting, you know, to see, you know, the men sleeping next to the torpedoes. They were hugging it, you know, to sleep. You know, we walked through quietly through the torpedo room. He took me to an ox tank, and I got to see all of the canned goods down there with no labels. And he showed me the whole, you know, shaking the can. He's like, that might be green beans. That might be cherries. I don't know. He was like, we'll see. We'll open it. We'll figure out what we're going to do. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So, I mean, that was my first experience knowing what a submarine was. And I was like, I'm never going to do that. That's crazy. How do you even live like that? And here I am. Here I am today. Mind you, I wasn't on a fast attack, which I would probably love because I would own the boat the whole entire time. I do not love the turnovers. Turnovers not fun. You know, knowing your equipment, knowing it 24/7, not having to turn it over and get it back crappy. You find it out when you're back underway that something broken they didn't tell you because they want to turn over quickly and go on their feet. That's just, you know, what I would have done. I would have chose to go fast attack rather than the Trident, the GN, if I wanted to. So let's see, hard times. I'm gonna touch on this. So part of my outline, I want to talk a little bit about like some of the challenges in the environment, because I talked about a lot little challenges. And not all challenges came from the environment. Some came from leadership. And when I was a first class, my chief and I clashed because we had very different leadership styles. We were both strong. We were both very different. Her approach was more directive and mine was more relationship based. And that created a little bit of friction, as naturally it would. But I made a decision to stay consistent, to lead the way I believe in, and every day was another chance. So, you know, yesterday was rough. Well, tomorrow's another day, and we're going to be positive, and we're going to start behind it. So to learn, to improve, to do better. And in the hardest moments, it was the people around me that made a difference, because that clashing was like an every other day thing. So having my crew finally, you know, talking to me, seeing how I was doing, they'd see me just moving around. But having them support me as well was great. And then we supported each other in simple ways, you know, sitting together, talking, even coloring. I brought my coloring crayons. But that's what resilience looked like for us on board. It was the simple things, because we didn't have big lavish things to get away. You know, we can't just walk off the boat and get away from the situation. We were around each other. And so that's what we did. We did the small things for each other. That journey was not easy, but it was worth it. And that shaped who I am, as a leader, as a sailor, and as a person. So I'm proud to have been part of something bigger than myself. What I have now, thank you. I'm going to show this slideshow. It's just pictures of my career, and I hope you enjoy it. It'll go through my whole career. So, and I'll explain if you have questions. If you just stop me if you want me to stay on that slide a little longer, because some of them are pretty packed. Okay, this way, maybe. That's the big button.
Hold on just a second. Right now.
It's gonna go like when it catches up.
Somebody-
Go down there. Yeah, of course, everybody has that same photo, the boot camp photo. That's a cute little Polaroid. The CO's galley making pizza. And that's my food service attendant eating the CO's pizza. That's earning my enlisted surface warfare. I don't know what was going on with me, why I was looking like that, but I guess maybe I wasn't happy in that division either. The bottom middle photo is after we won the NA award, prestigious award for cooking on board. And so they sent us to, it was St. Augustine, Florida for school, for chef school, which was really neat. So I am not a pastry anything. I don't like baking, but I do love art. I do love drawing, and I did like a lot of coloring, but apparently I was good at making cakes. So I became the cake boss. I hated it. Some of these cakes would take me a full 24 hours to make, nonstop sleep, because we didn't have the tools we needed on board. So a lot of that writing or the designs I did with the toothpick and frosting, or a painting brush. I didn't have a lot of piping and things like that. So I did all those free-handed. I'm so tired thinking about it. More cakes that I did for birthdays. That one in the corner of the Seahawks was for my husband's Father's Day, cake at home. But so my professional journey with celebrities, yes, I got to meet Chef Irvine from Food Network, Dinner Impossible, Patrick Swayze. Yes, that they closed the barber shop down for just the cooks because we were cooking while he was on board the Truman. And that T-shirt says, "You can dirty dance all over me." Yes, I still have that shirt. So it was a great privilege to be able to meet him before he passed because he was already sick right here. And then I think this is a Detroit Lions football player, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sporty, but I remember him coming and people were getting his autograph, so I took a picture with him. Bart Simpson, they're famous because they predict everything that's happening. And then, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I got to feed Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I asked him, "Can you say it's not a tumor?" And he did for me. My surface life, just a little snippet, my first re-enlistment, underway replenishments. I always tried to be outside of the galley. I got tired of cooking, so I would volunteer with the DC men. I was one of the first non-rated DC men that was on the damage control training team. So that was really fun. And that was another thing too, was translating the DC terminology into the submarine terminology. I never called man in charge because it was translating that language, trying to dump that language out and trying to say it right on the boat. I probably would have been fired in the first 5 minutes, even though I knew what to do. Halloween, walk ceremony, actual shellback. Yes, that's me in a kettle. And being on watch, getting ready to go on watch, being armed up, and then of course my female friends. Going to Bess and seeing the clubhouse for the first time, being invited. Lieutenant Lee was being promoted that day to Lieutenant Commander Lee. She was one of the first female officers, and so they invited us from class to come out to the clubhouse. We were invited, so we were allowed to go in there and qualify and celebrate that with her. And that was the wives, and this was the sub that's from the same picture. Groton Townhouse, everybody probably ate there 1,000 times. That was the only place I could get to. So we had lunch, and that was one picture of the foyer in one of the classrooms. Full diving suit. I volunteered to do a chowder contest out in Bremerton. I can't remember what the festival was called, but we won something. It was so much fun just to be out there to see the community too. And this guy in the middle is now a senior chief. Monroy, she is now a chief. All submariners. So we are doing big things, and it's been over 10 years? It's almost 10 years now since we've enlisted women have been on board. Just moments with my shipmates. That was another re-enlistment here in the corner with supply. That's my sea dad in the middle. And my crew just doing different things. The bottom corner picture was the division that had the LPO and the female chief. So my chief was in front of me, and then Angie Kugler is the redhead in the middle. She's the first female cop. So I know Angie really well. She was also a part of my retirement ceremony. This is just us out in town together as a division. We did a lot of things together because we weren't together enough on the boat. So this corner picture was awesome. That was my first deployment coming into Guam. Halfway night, I paid for the captain's seat. And part of that deal was to be able to ride the sail in port. And so that was me on the sail. I know crap you that I was halfway asleep up there. And I'm so glad I was harnessed up because I had just gotten off a watch and I was so tired, but I was not going to miss that moment. That was special for me. And then of course, 15 years later, seeing my first boat or my first ship being on Michigan and visiting the MRS land out in Guam was the coolest thing. Life on board, me cooking, me in the background being, myself. And so I had never done a swim call in my whole entire 21-year career. And on my birthday in 2019, I jumped off a vessel for the first time. So I jumped off a submarine, and that was so cool. I told 5 people behind me and 5 people in front of me, if I died, I died. Because I was not a strong swimmer. And they were orca watching in the front, and they were doing gun falls in the back. I said, I die, just let me go. They laughed at me. They're like, we will watch you, don't worry. You can see in, a lot of the pictures, we look pretty glazed over and tired, but we were making it. This was a EMAT training with our doc, for the ladies. The EMAT is emergency, emergency medical assistance, for the doc. The cooks are the right-hand person to the doc. There's only one doctor on board. So that's us giving, training. We're looking crazy and tired, but our doc was amazing. Doc Davis. Other moments. These VIPs, these are the people that I met that are very important people to me. Mick Campa. I think that was the chief of naval operations. I don't know his name, but I was like, hey, people were getting pictures and took autographs. I was like, I guess I got a picture with him. Of course, Mick Pod, Rick West, that guy, he's so awesome. I work with him a lot. He lives just down the road. I could probably throw a rock at his house. Drawing a blank. What's his name? I'm so sorry. Somebody tell me. Mansfield wrote a book. He did a lot of things too, but he was very important to us. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. And then of course, Tudor Davis. That's when we went to go visit him. But that was before his 100th birthday. So.
Like John Mansfield.
John Mansfield, thank you, Pete. So yes, and I have his book. He autographed it for me. This was the Christmas party that he asked me would I be willing to be a commander, and I was like, no, thank you. He didn't get to see me be a commander, but his daughter, she tells me all the time he would have been proud of me because I did end up accepting that nomination and becoming a commander of Bremerton base. So. My qualification, so that's Mission Water in the middle, off the coast of nowhere. And that was my chief's pitting with Angie Kugler, which is the first cop, and my chief, which is the first female enlisted to get her dolphins. So that's us 3 over at the Horse and Cow after I got pinned my anchors. And this is, the last 3 years, things that I've done. I've attended a lot of retirements. The honor flight? That's the top corner. We would always volunteer to bring in those veterans that would come off the flights. That was my division. I was the only female with male first classes. So I thought that was pretty awesome over at Naval Base Kitsap. And of course, that's my husband drop with my cover on. I love you. Bremerton Base. I've had so much fun. This top corner of the old float, that was my first parade. That was the first thing I ever participated in with USSBI Bremerton Base, and I was not qualified. I wanted to hold the ensign, and Steve Corcoran at the time was the commander, and he says, no, you're not qualified, you're a nub. You can hold the ensign when you're qualified. When I got back and I had my fish, he said, give me that ensign. I'm gonna hold the ensign in the parade. So this was Steve giving me my coffee cup when I was selected for chief. And then a bunch of, when me at my chief's pinning, everybody came to support me. That's when I knew I was family. The support that I get from my base is tremendous. And these are a lot of cool events that we do. Our soup downs, the armed forces, the military appreciation. We seeded money for a kennel at the Retzel, the Veterans Retirement Home. So it's partnered with, I think, the Humane Society. The Humane Society has these elder animals, dogs, and they are taken care of by the Retzel community. And it gives the retired veteran a routine, some responsibility, something to look forward to in the morning. They go on watch and they walk the dogs, they feed the dogs, they do all the things. They have a little watch standard list and stuff, but we seeded the money to get an inside cage and an outside kennel for these dogs. So every time that a dog is adopted, they let us know, and we publish that, and we create a little placard for that animal that was adopted, and we hang it. And so we have names and placards of all the animals that were adopted. And that first of all, animal was Meatball, and she went pretty quick. But of course, our Western region, our Halloween events that we do. Yes, I'm Barbie. Let's go party. That's that one. I down there doing a collaboration with the Chief Selects over on base with the Navy League, me with the princesses, and I don't know if Michelle's out here, but she does our crafting for sub vets. So she holds in all the events with anybody who wants to craft. So it's open to the community too. They have like 10 hours of the day and they go crafting, but any proceeds that go from that go straight into the base. It's kind of cool. My retirement, that day, that was amazing. I had this retirement ceremony for my daughter, my oldest daughter. And she was there through my whole career, and she was just terrified every time I left. So I didn't have it, the retirement ceremony for my husband. I did definitely embarrass him there. That was fun. But that was for my daughter to know that I'm not going anywhere anymore. She does sometimes get terrified when I have a bigger backpack and I walk out the door. She's like, where are you going? She definitely has PTSD in a way. So that was for my eldest daughter. And that's my family. I appreciate you guys allowing me to be here. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm just
By the way, Master Chief Les now has that picture since he was on my first boat.
Oh, there are no questions. I'm going to walk away.
Yeah, go for it.
Does the committee have anything?